of corporate globalism and of capitalism. Currently, she's the Gloria Steinem Chair in Media, Culture, and Feminist Studies at Rutgers University. Welcome, NAOMI.
Hi. Wow, I am so happy to be here. This is beautiful. And I have just arrived here in New Hampshire. I'm with the Sanders campaign, and I am really here to make sure that we win a Green New Deal. And that it is the Green New Deal. I was just saying that my main reason for wading into politics, as you heard, I'm a writer. I've never got involved in presidential politics before in my life. But as you know, things are pretty serious out there. We don't have a lot of time. We need a new administration, and we need them to start on day one with an absolutely transformational plan. And so I want to talk to you about something maybe a little unexpected, which is why we should understand that climate change is a feminist issue, and why winning a Green New Deal is also a feminist issue. So I have been writing about, and in my books like The Shock Doctrine and This Changes Everything, I have been in a lot of disaster zones. I've covered wars, but I've also covered disasters like Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Maria, Hurricane Sandy. And what I have seen again and again is that whatever is unequal and unjust in a society, climate change just makes it worse. So whoever is already being left behind, whoever is already being neglected, then when you overlay these intense weather events on top of that, then those people really are abandoned. I was recently in Paradise, California, which is the community that was burned to the ground in the most deadly fire in California's history. And what I learned there is what I have learned in so many of these disaster zones, which is that it is overwhelmingly elderly women alone in their homes, because we haven't invested in the social infrastructure, right? We have cut back in so many areas, like healthcare, like elder care, like mental health supports. And so that when we have these shocks, they turn absolutely lethal, and it costs us lives, and it overwhelmingly is costing women's lives. And then something else happens in these disaster zones, which is that when you have communities that are intensely stressed, right? Because people have lost their belongings and they're fighting with their insurance companies and the government isn't there helping, then what happens is that very often men turn on the women in their lives and they take out their aggression in the form of domestic violence. And we have seen this in the aftermath of all of the disasters that I've mentioned, that rates of domestic violence increase, that femicide, the killing of women, increases. So of course, all of these issues are interrelated. The other thing that we see is that women on the ground in these disaster zones are actually first responders, that it is nurses who are saving lives, that it is home care workers and teachers who are saving lives, saving the lives of the people they care for, of the kids that they teach in their schools, and we need to recognize this work. So what you learn when you really immerse yourself in these disasters is that, you know, we talk about a women's issue, we talk about a labor issue, we talk about militarism, as if we can pry any of this apart, as if this isn't all interrelated, and it is all part of the same story. And that's why it is so exciting that we are finally talking about a truly transformational approach to crisis. And that is what the Green New Deal represents. It is, of course, a jobs plan. It is, of course, a climate plan. But I also see it as a profoundly feminist project, especially if we do it right, the way the senator is proposing, especially if we link it with Medicare for all, right? Especially if we link it with universal child care. You know, it doesn't burn a lot of carbon to take care of a kid. It doesn't burn a lot of carbon to take care of the elderly. And we need, these are the most undervalued jobs in our economy because it's women's work, right? So what we need to do is we need way more of these jobs, and we need to make sure that they're well-paying jobs, that they're unionized jobs, that we value women's work. So all of this is why it is now my enormous pleasure to to introduce someone who saw this coming. Let me tell you, if we had listened to Bernie back in the 1980s, when he was a lonely voice saying, we need to take climate change seriously, we need to listen to the scientists, we would not be in the world of mess that we are in today. And that is not just true about climate change. It is true about war. It is true about bank bailouts. It is true about cutting health care and education. If we had listened to Bernie all of those decades, we would be in a different world. And if we listen to him now, we will live in a different world in 10 years from now, in 20 years from now. Bernie Sanders has been standing with women and defending women's rights for decades. He has been unwavering in his support for our right to control our bodies. Bernie knows that Medicare for all is a feminist issue, is a reproductive rights issue. Bernie has been fighting for the lowest paid, most undervalued workers in our economy, and I don't need to tell you that that means women workers. I think you can judge a candidate by his supporters. Bernie is supported by nurses. Bernie is supported by teachers. Bernie is supported by Amazon workers. Bernie is supported by Disney workers. Because women understand that Bernie has their backs, and women understand that these issues cannot be pried apart, that they are all women's issues. When we fight unjust wars, we are fighting for women and children. When we fight climate change, we are fighting for women and children. So I want you to join me in welcoming a man that I am proud to call a friend, and a man who I hope to call my president, Bernie Sanders.
Naomi, thank you. And I want you all to know that this woman, perhaps more than anyone in the country, is helping to lead the fight against the existential threat to this country and to the world regarding climate change. Naomi, thank you so much for all you're doing. Listen, let me thank all of the organizers of this event and thank all of you for coming out. What this event is telling Donald Trump is that the Women's March 3 years ago helped alert not only Americans but the entire world that we will not accept the divisiveness, the racism, the sexism, the homophobia, the xenophobia, the religious bigotry of Donald Trump. Together, we will make Donald Trump, at best, a one-term president. And what the Women's March and what we are all about is saying that it is the women of this country who have the right to control their bodies, not politicians. What we are saying is that in America, if you work 40 hours a week, you are not going to be living in poverty. We're going to raise that minimum wage to a living wage. And when we talk about wages, we're going to end the disgrace of women making 79 cents on the dollar compared to men, equal pay for equal work. And when we talk about justice in America, we understand that all people have a right to join trade unions so they can earn decent wages and decent benefits. that our children deserve the best quality child care in the world. That, as NAOMI said, when we talk about justice in America, we're going to end the disgrace of the United States being the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all of our people. We will pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. This is a pivotal moment in American history. That is where we are right now. And what we are saying is that this country now does not want an administration that fosters divisiveness, hatred, sexism, and racism. We want a government that believes in compassion, that believes in love, that believes in justice. So what this moment in American history, and by the way, it's not just a moment that the American people are looking at and living. This is a moment that the entire world is looking at. Once again, we want the entire world to look at this country and say, America is the land of hope, it's the land of opportunity, it is the land of justice. And we got a president who wants to divide us up. And I could say a lot of bad things about Donald Trump, but I do it every day. And I can tell you about all the reasons that we disagree with him. But I think the worst thing is that every president, even conservative presidents, understand that the function of a president is to bring people together as Americans. Whether we're black, whether we're white, whether Latino, whether we're Native American, Asian American, whether we're straight, whether we're gay, whether we're born in the United States, whether we're immigrants, we are Americans. And we will not accept the divisiveness of this president trying to tear us apart, one group against the other. So right now, what we are about is not only defeating the most dangerous president in the history of the United States, and you're going to see how dangerous this person is in the trial that's coming up this week. And by the way, I wish I could be back in New Hampshire and Iowa, but I will be in Washington doing my constitutional duty. But what this whole campaign is about, it's not just about defeating Trump. It's about taking a hard look at where we are in America as the richest country in the history of the world. And the richest country in the history of the world should not have half of our people, primarily women, living paycheck to paycheck. In the richest country in the history of the world, 500,000 people tonight should not be homeless. In the richest country in the history of the world, 45 million people should not be struggling with student debt. In the richest country in the history of the world, we should have the best public school systems on earth, where our teachers are paid a good wage for the important work they do. And in the richest country in the history of the world, we have got to understand, as Naomi Klein just talked about, that we are now fighting for the future of this planet, for the well-being of these beautiful kids I see here, and for future generations. And that means that we have got to have the courage to take on the fossil fuel industry and to tell them that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of this planet. What this whole effort is about is thinking big and not small. It is understanding where we can go as a nation, the extraordinary things that we can do, rebuilding our infrastructure, thinking about health care for all human beings in America as a right, not a privilege. Understanding that all of us should be able to get the education that we need regardless of our income. Understanding that we should not have more people in jail than any other country because of a racist and broken criminal justice system. Understanding that we do not demonize immigrants, we welcome immigrants because we are a nation of immigrants. So the message of today from me is that men and women, and by the way, men, if you think abortion rights, if you think equal pay for equal work is just a women's issue, you are dead wrong. It is a human issue, and the men have got to stand with the women. We are in this together. That's what we are, women and men, gay and straight, black and white and Latino. We are in this together, not only to defeat Trump, but to create the kind of nation that you and I know we can become. Let's go forward together. Thank you all very much.
All